Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Oasis Focus and Finance Show, your special Ramadan edition. I'm your host, Shafiq Morten. In last week's show, we discussed tax savings on certain investment products. In today's show, we have a look at living annuities versus guaranteed annuities. And in studio with me are Mansoor and Ebrahim Rawoot. Gentlemen, assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam, Shafiq.
Ebrahim, let's start off with you. What happens when a person retires? What would you say would be the major considerations when I retire? Where do we start?
I think, Shafiq, generally if you take anyone that is between the age of 50, 55, he's going to start going through quite a bit of change in terms of the next few years preparing for retirement. And I think, there's a few considerations that obviously many people need to understand as to what is going to happen. But let's start off with the fact that there's going to be a mental change. He's going to have to mentally prepare himself for retirement. It is a big decision at the end of the day, considering many people work for 25, 30 years, they're in this comfortable spot, and now all of a sudden retirement dawns upon them. But then there's also a couple of other things that's going to start happening. And a few of those is the fact that, where you were earning this very large income from your employer, that's now obviously going to taper off because, you generally don't earn the same income that you would have earned from your pension fund as if you were employed. But then at the same time, your household expenses is going to start changing. In most instances, your children would have, worked, they would be married, they would be out of the house. And then at the same time, with that less dependency, you would have a little bit more income for yourself. But then also there's going to be other major expenses that's going to play a big part in your life. And that would be things like medical aid. That will probably become the biggest.
Probably your single biggest debit order in your retirement years.
Most certainly. And it does play a very important part. Now, you're probably thinking, Shafiq, that, this is normal. The considerations that I've just mentioned, it's going to apply to just about everyone. But I think it's about that detailed planning that you're going to have to put in place in order to make sure that you are on the right path. Now, this period of retirement, we refer to it as being, the wealth harvesting phase. When you're 21 and you start working, you're in that wealth creation phase. You then start approaching retirement and you start entering the wealth preservation phase. And the harvesting phase is really you saying, whatever I've worked for over the last 20 and 30 years, I now need that to start working for me. And that will be in the form of, a pension that you would effectively earn. So many people who would belong to a retirement savings, they would be contributing to a pension fund, a provident fund, or a retirement annuity. And there are certain rules that applies to those three products. So very quickly, with regard to a retirement annuity fund and a pension fund, when I retire, I'm entitled to take a maximum of 1/3 in cash. The balance is then used to invest or buy a pension, and that will pay me my monthly income. And with a provident fund, I can take everything in cash. But very importantly, taking all the cash, it's easier said than done, but it's how you're able to manage that money in order to ensure that it's going to last you through your living years.
Mansoor, when we retire, we have to make certain decisions. So tell us something about the types of annuity that a person can buy.
There are two main products that one can use to provide you an income for post-retirement savings, because that's effectively what the product is. It's a post-retirement product because you've retired and we're going into. So the first would be an investment type product called the guaranteed annuity. And then secondly, you've got the investment product, which is a linked investment living annuity. Each of these meet different needs, and it's essential for you to basically weigh up, based on your needs and expectations, which of the two works better for you. So I'm maybe going to go in a bit in detail of both of them, Shafiq. So if we look at a guaranteed annuity, as we mentioned, it's a product that is purchased from a life assurance company. Guaranteed annuity, the income that you are going to be receiving, it will be an income that is predetermined by the insurance company for the rest of your life. There's various types of guaranteed annuities. Most people would go with a guaranteed annuity where in the event of him passing on, an income would pass on to the spouse basically. So she'd still be able to maintain a quality and standard of living. Most cases the insurance company would probably pay a 50 to 75% of the income that you were actually earning. The problem with a guaranteed annuity in my view is that it isn't really a legacy product. It won't pass on beyond your spouse. And at the same time, the income that you're earning as well is dependent on the time frame that you're taking the guaranteed for. So for argument's sake, a simple example, if you take 2 million rand, 2/3 portion being the portion that's buying you the guaranteed annuity, if you take a guaranteed term of 20 years, the likelihood of the client receiving roughly 11,000, 11,500 on a monthly basis. If it takes a guaranteed term of 15 years, that 11.5 jumps to 13. Guaranteed term of 10 years, it might jump to 14.5, 15. And if it takes a guaranteed term of 5 years, he starts off with the income of 18,000. So obviously, the lower the guaranteed term, the higher the income you're getting. But the risk with that is if you pass on beyond the guaranteed term of 5 years, that means nothing passes on to your beneficiary basically or your spouse basically. But if you passed on within that 5-year term, so again most people would go with a guaranteed term 20 years because the likelihood of you living 20 years or passing on within a 20-year period so that your spouse still generates some sort of income. Shafiq, there's certain factors that life insurance companies would consider in order to factor what that annuity would be, and that would be your age. They normally say the younger you are, the longer you're likely to live, hence the lower the monthly payout you'll receive. Secondly would be your gender. Women generally have a higher life expectancy than men, and on average, therefore they would receive a lower pension initially if they do go the guaranteed route. Then they also look at interest rates. The higher the prevailing interest rate, the higher your monthly pension would likely be at the time you retire. And then lastly, the choice of annuity that you're taking. Like I said, you have a number of product options when it comes to guaranteed annuities with different risk profiles. The more insurance you require, the lower the annuity will be. So if you want your spouse to be covered, that means they'll start you with a lower income. But if it's only covering yourself, you get a high income, obviously, Shafiq. That's on the guaranteed annuity side. If we looked at the linked investment living annuity, again, why I say linked, it's linked to an investment. You effectively can refer to it as being an investment product here. With a linked investment living annuity, your insurance company is shifting the responsibility of your money maintaining its purchasing power or maintaining the value in order to provide you with income for the rest of your life is moved on to the investor. So here, factors that one need to consider and be very careful about is one, what drawdown rate you're going to be taking. Because you can't take an excessive drawdown rate and eat into your capital within 10 years and then there's no more money. The second thing one needs to factor into account, and again here very importantly, with a linked investment living annuity, you as an investor have the option of choosing the investment portfolio that money is being invested in. So here you've got the option of having your post-retirement savings living annuity to be Sharia compliant, whereas with a guaranteed annuity that we spoke about, you have no such right. You don't have a say as to which portfolio it's being invested into and how that money must be managed. Here you decide on the portfolio, you can make sure it's Sharia compliant, and you decide on the drawdown rate that you're drawing. And the most important thing maybe for the listeners to take away from the linked investment living annuity, it's an annuity that effectively becomes a legacy product. If it's managed properly, you draw an appropriate form of income from there, your great-grandchildren could still be living off that income, Shafiq.
Ebrahim, tell us something about the rules of a living annuity.
You have a guaranteed annuity. It's there as a purpose, but then all of a sudden you don't have choice, you don't have right as to what you can possibly do. And I think, after you've worked for 30, 35 years, you still want to at least have some sort of predetermination to say, but I would like this and that and that and that. So living annuities probably are far more flexible products because it gives you that options, it gives you those flexibilities. The one very important term that we spoke about is drawdown rates. And there we've got what the law says. The law says I must draw a minimum of 2.5%, and I cannot go beyond 17.5%. So there are certain parameters in terms of what I must and I cannot do. But I've got choice. But at the same time, if I'm conservative about my approach, and you could draw, a reasonable rate that's going to ensure capital appreciation over the long term, that's great. At the same time, you can choose portfolios within your living annuity. So I can say to myself, you know what, I am not that much interested in risks. I want to go into a more conservative portfolio. But again, we've got the choice. At the same time, if you're in a living annuity, you can transfer to a guaranteed annuity, but you cannot go the other way.
Right.
And I don't think you really want to go into a guaranteed annuity when you really just don't have the choices available to you. You have nominated beneficiaries, as Mansoor mentioned, so there's a legacy concept, and any living annuity doesn't form part of your estate, so hence you have these nominated beneficiaries.
Mansoor, what kind of a drawdown would be recommended for these products?
Obviously, with a guaranteed annuity, you don't have that option, because the insurance company will tell you how much you can get, and that unfortunately is what you're going to be stuck with for the rest of your life. There might be some inflationary increases depending on the discretion of the company, obviously. Coming to the linked investment living annuity, my recommendation there would be to draw an income of not more than 3 to 5, 3 to 6% at most. Because remember, like I said earlier, the risk is moved on to you, the investor, now. So your money is going to go into a portfolio. Ebrahim mentioned most people would go into a balanced stable fund, which is a more conservative portfolio. Fund would generally give you an average of between 8 and 10%. So try and draw an income less than that, so that at least the returns of the portfolio is covering the income you're drawing out, and still maybe showing you 1 to 2% growth on your capital. Shafiq.
Mansoor, in previous programs you've spoken a lot about tax on pre-retirement savings. We're now talking about taxes on retirement savings itself. Just quickly take us through it.
Shafiq, as Ebrahim mentioned earlier, you obviously got different tax implications for different products. So with regard to a pension fund and a retirement annuity, you're allowed to take a maximum of 1/3 as a lump sum. The remainder has to buy the pension annuity. With a provident fund, you're allowed to take the full amount paid out in cash. But again, the key thing an individual must understand here is the more cash you want access to, the more tax you're going to end up paying. So the tax that is applicable to somebody opting for retirement, be it on the 1/3 or the full amount from the provident fund, it will be the retirement fund tax table, Shafiq, where your first 500,000 Rand would be tax free, the next 200 would be taxed at 18%, next 350 would be taxed at 27%, and everything over R1,050,000 would be taxed at 36%. The listeners as well must remember, or individuals must remember, that if you've got a pension fund or retirement fund and it's under 247,500, you're actually allowed to take the full amount paid out as a lump sum. That would be tax free. That's only at retirement, not before the retirement year, Shafiq. And then similarly with regard to the 2/3, what's the tax implication on that actual annuity that you're drawing? And this applies to both guaranteed annuities as well as linked investment living annuities or living annuities. The tax rate that you pay would be dependent on the income that you're drawing out. So if you got 2 million Rand and you're drawing 10% income, that's 200,000, you'll be taxed based on 200,000 being drawn out from that annuity. So you're actually in control as to how much tax you do want to pay on your monthly annuity, because it's dependent on how much income you do want to draw. There are certain thresholds where there'll be no tax implications, and from the 1st of March 2017 to the 28th of February 2018, the thresholds are as follows. So a person below the age of 65, the first 75,750 Rand per annum won't be taxed. Person 65 and above but not yet 75 will get first 117,300 as a threshold, no tax obviously on any income earned, and anybody over 75, the first 131,150 Rand of income earned, there won't be any tax implications.
Ebrahim, just take us through what sort of options an investor has at retirement.
I think, the easiest way to do it is probably to do it by means of an example. And, if we take a hypothetical case, let's take a person, call him Mr. Ishmael. He's been working for 30, 35 years. He's now entering retirement, and the scenario is he's got a 6 million rand pension fund. And he now needs to decide what are the options as to what does he do with the money. And Mansoor mentioned, because you're in a pension fund, he's allowed to only take a maximum of 1/3 in cash. So if he decides that he wants to take this 1/3, which is in fact 2 million rand, the retirement fund tax tables come into play. And very quickly, the first 500,000 is tax free. The next 200,000 is taxed at 18%, which is 36,000 rand tax. The next 350,000 is taxed at 27%, which is 94,500 rand tax. And anything greater than the 500, 200 and 350,000, which is at $1,050,000, will then be taxed at 36%. And that comes out to 342,000 rand. So on a 2 million rand cash withdrawal, he's going to be paying 472,500 rand tax. Well, that's a lot of money.
That's throwing money away.
It certainly is, Shafiq. And if you take the effective rate of that tax that he's paying, it's roughly 24%. Nonetheless, it's 24% of his cash portion that he's parting with. So what does he do? Well, he says, you know what, I don't really have to take the 1/3 in cash. It's an option. But I can start playing with my numbers and saying, well, you know what, I'm debt free. I've got a huge amount of cash reserves elsewhere. So what I really want to do is take the most efficient amount possible. And the first 500,000 is obviously what he wants to take. And then he decides, well, let's take the next 200. So on a 700,000 cash withdrawal, he's only paying 36,000 rand tax.
Yeah, I agree that 200,000 at 18%, it's relatively cheap still to get access to a bit more cash.
Exactly. And you know what, the effective rate now is all of a sudden 5%. So having paid 24% average tax to 5%, it now makes a lot of sense. But then really the big picture is more about what is he leaving behind in order to invest in an annuity in order to earn this pension. And if he had to take the full 1/3 in cash, he's investing 4 million rand. Let's assume a conservative drawdown of maybe 5%. He's going to earn 200,000 rand of income for the year. If he only took 700,000 cash, he's taking 5.3 million to buy him a pension at 5%. He's earning 265,000 rand. So that is roughly 65,000 rand a year as a difference in the income between the two options. That is a substantial difference. But then also look at this tax saving between having paid an effective 24% tax versus him paying a 5% tax. So really, he's got options, but we need to ensure the most tax efficient option is going to become the better of the two options.
Right, now Ebrahim, now Mr. Ismail's been a wise man. He's done everything that his financial advisor has told him. He's worked for 20 years. He's going to be maybe retired for 20 years, inshallah. And he's taken a small lump sum out, according to what you've advised. But what sort of product would you advise him to go forward from here on in?
Yeah, you know what, I think, and Mansoor, so nicely put it right at the beginning where he spoke about the two annuity options. And I think really, the investment-linked living annuity option is going to become the better option. Yes, we must display a reasonable degree of maturity. We must be conservative in our approach, and we should take heed of what the financial advisor recommends in order to ensure that this is going to last you through your living years. But then at the same time, you have this investment portfolio options, because many investment-linked living annuities will offer you a basket of products. At Oasis, we've really defined it to what is called a balanced portfolio, a combination of asset classes in equity, property and income, so it's diversified. But then we go one step further by saying we also give you exposure to the local and the offshore instrument market as well. So there's further protection on your investment, but there's also the ability of allowing the fund manager to work within certain parameters to be able to create stability in your portfolio. At Oasis, we've got 4 investment portfolios: an aggressive high equity portfolio, a moderate risk progressive portfolio, and then a stable portfolio, which to me is ideally suited for that Mr. Ismail and everyone else out there that is entering their years of retirement. Remember, at 65 years of age, you don't want to have sleepless nights about what is happening in the market. If the US decides to sneeze, am I going to catch a cold? That stable portfolio has been designed to minimize the exposure of market risk and volatility, and I think it's a very good option. There is a fourth portfolio, which is a cash portfolio, and that is really to say, well, you know what, I want to minimize the risk. I'm not happy with even an equity asset class. But at the same time, you know, they say you need a little bit of equity in order to beat inflation over the long term, because that pension of today is not going to suffice you 10 years later, because inflation and the cost of living is continuing to go up, and we need something that's going to combat inflation, and equities does that very, very well. So at this point in time, the investment-linked living annuity just becomes that better option based on all the advantages of a living annuity versus the restrictive environment of entering a guaranteed annuity.
Mansoor, we're going to discuss takeaways right now, but not in the food sense. What do you take away from what we've discussed today?
Shafiq, look, firstly, I would urge every individual that's nearing or looking at retiring to first speak to a regulated and registered financial advisor.
And that's important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Before signing any documentation. I've seen it over and over again where HR gives them a document, they sign, and they end up in a provident fund taking the full amount paid out when they didn't need to pay that tax, basically. So first thing is make sure you consult with an advisor. Remember the decisions you're making there, and when you're signing that document, it's probably one of the most important decisions, almost as important as choosing your life partner or buying that first house, Shafiq, because that money is going to have to maintain your quality and standard of living during your retirement years. The other factors that one needs to be cognizant of, especially when going into a living annuity, would be the drawdown rate, as Ebrahim mentioned, your investment choice as to which investment portfolio you're looking at, and obviously the investment manager that you're choosing to buy that annuity from. Lastly, don't call your advisor the week you're retiring.
All right.
Because
it seems like you've had those calls
no, I've
before.
had it, Shafiq, and they're calling you Tuesday, I need to give the paperwork in by Friday. I mean, you don't give yourself enough time to really think what it is you need, how much cash you'd like, whether you're still looking at going for another Umrah trip, do we need to make that cash available? And then my advice would be start that homework 6 months before retirement date. So if you know June 2017, you should be talking to me in January already, so that I could basically lay out the platform for you, show you what tax implications are if you're taking 500, 700, gives you a much better understanding to plan a fruitful retirement and make sure that you retire financially independent during your retirement years.
I'm into that. Gentlemen, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shafiq.
And a special thanks to our guests in today's edition of the Oasis Focus and Finance Show, your special Ramadan edition. So special thanks to Mansoor, Mia and Ebrahim Rawoot for talking to us about guaranteed annuities versus living annuities. Should you wish to watch this or any of our other shows, you can log into the Oasis Crescent YouTube channel. And should you wish to call us, 0860 100 786 or info@oasiscrescent.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Shafiq Morten. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.